Hi there, and welcome to the latest edition of Take 5, InMobi Commerce's interview series where we talk with retail media experts to hear their perspectives on how the media landscape is changing and evolving. I'm Sarah Hughes, Head of Marketing at InMobi Commerce. Speaking with me today is Elizabeth Marsten, Senior Director of Strategic Marketplace Services at Tinuiti. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a heck of a title, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do at Tinuiti, and then we can get started with our questions?
Awesome. Yeah. So Tinuiti, I work on retail media, as to put it very succinctly. So strategic marketplace services is what you start with when you start work on this 2.5-ish years ago, almost 3, before it really was, a thing as it is today. So classic paid search background, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, did some marketplaces, as stint Amazon, eBay, Jet, Walmart, of course, and then landed at Tinuiti doing retail media in the marketplaces department.
Retail media hasn't really taken off until the last 2 years or so. So in your opinion, why do you think retail media has become such a hot topic?
I mean, first and foremost, it's Amazon, right? So Amazon showed us that you can monetize your site for yourself very, very well. I mean, we had some folks that were doing before affiliate marketing, right? Like that was out there, but to that volume. And so when you think about the number of the hundreds of millions of monthly visitors that a Walmart has, that a Target that has to their website, wow, it sure does sound really good to go ahead and monetize that site traffic somehow.
Yeah, I think and Amazon kind of showed the full kind of scale that was available and the budgets that were available for retail media. I think to your point, I don't know if a lot of retailers really realized how much revenue potential there was in retail media until Amazon kind of paved the way.
Absolutely. And they did some, what was nice about the way that they kind of like convinced us all that this was a good idea was, of course, they have the benefit of an e-commerce system. So it's a closed loop, like naturally out of the gate. So the conversion rates follow, then they start to build audiences, and then they start to really understand who the shopper is and all of the fun things that they're doing online.
So obviously there are a ton of retailers that are starting to launch their own retail media networks, and Tinuiti works with a ton of amazing brands and retailers. So what, in your opinion, do you think retailers can do to make their platforms more appealing to advertisers that are buying their media?
So tagging into kind of what I was just talking about, it's that closed loop, right? So if I'm a endemic brand to a Walmart, to a Target, to a Kroger, and I've existed for more than 10 years, essentially, I may have a more of a legacy kind of digital footprint than somebody that's showed up in the last 5 years. So that closed loop capability for the in-store piece, if I traditionally have, 75 to 90% of my sales happening in store, yeah, this website came and the products are available, but I still have the majority of my customers maybe having an online experience or having some kind of exposure and then going in store. That in-store piece is so key. I need it like yesterday.
So brands that have a legacy of selling in store, so retailers are going to need to really make that connection between an online interaction and an in-store purchase. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it is scale. Like, so I would say the real division is, we see a lot of marketing concepts around closed loop, right? And that's true. But there are certain thresholds that have to be met in terms of spend behind that audience, and it makes total sense, right? You have to have statistical significance. You have your group A cohort, and you have your group B, and who was exposed to me and who wasn't and how long. But if we're talking about on-site, featured product, sponsored product search, the ability to even understand down to that level, when someone searched for a product, looked at the product detail page, didn't buy, maybe added to their list, or maybe that was in the app or not in the app or whatever, and then went in and bought. Like right now, we kind of have to back into that. So if I only spend, $5,000 or $10,000 on sponsored products, and for some of these brands, they don't have huge catalogs. We're not all giant conglomerates. We have 7 SKUs in a Walmart nationally, which is huge. When you think about that, could be like 1,000 stores. And I spend $15,000 a month on a sponsored products. I have to back into that information on like what my total lift was to kind of understand how that how those two things play together.
When you're working with brands or advertisers, how do you advise them to effectively reach the best audience across multiple retail media networks?
It's tough, right? It's like when you go to, I wouldn't call it we're in college yet, but more like high school. So you have to choose your electives, and you have to be, there's the classes that you have to take or the retailers that you have to engage with in order to graduate, right? And then there's well, where is everybody? Maybe you want to invest more in like a retail media arm for TikTok or something, because that's where all the cool kids are. Maybe that's the drama club. I don't know, right? You have to have this kind of internal conversation with yourself as a brand and say, where do we have to be? Where are we committed? Where do we need to be? And then kind of back into it from there, because it is really difficult on a per brand basis to definitively say, put 30% in Walmart, put 20% in Target, put 10% in Kroger. But depending on who you are, what your assortment is, and your fulfillment capabilities and your distribution, that's a totally different equation for everyone.
And right now, do you see advertisers kind of approaching their retail media strategy based off which retailers their revenue is coming from, or are they thinking about it from the perspective of where is my target audience purchasing, or a little bit of both?
It's definitely both. I have to honor, so that's where I was going with it. You have to honor those historical, those developed relationships, right? So you're pushing product to your core audience that is familiar with already an in-store presence of some kind, like they could buy it there. And then you have to get the new folks, right? So how do we find that age group that's, coming into college, graduating, first apartment, that kind of stuff. And they start, there's a huge LTV there, right? So how do you find them where they're at, capture them and get your product in front of them? And sometimes, for example, for beauty, maybe that's Ulta. Maybe, maybe that's like a Sephora. Maybe that's like a micro influencer thing with super great with Ulta, right? So it is a very dependent on, it's a balance, right? Between honoring your core and making sure that they know where your stuff is and that's available, and hey, you're there for them. And then how do I find the new folks? Where are the cool kids hanging out?
As retail media is evolving and changing, how can these advertisers and retailers work together collaboratively to really create the better customer experiences, better shopping experiences for the end shopper?
So I think as a industry, we have to mature, right? So what's happening now is retail isn't really known as the innovative, go get it, right? That's just not what they do. And it's huge. These are huge organizations that we're asking to change. So part of it has to do with integrating this digital experience, this digital media with the in-store experience, but also the physical end-to-end, right? So we're talking about negotiations with the buyer. We're talking about line reviews, fulfillment, distribution, how fast does it get there? How often? What are the, is it better for the brand margin-wise to be only on a .com or in the marketplace? Or, should they be focusing on physical in-store expansion? Do they use online to show popularity of an item to try and get more SKUs on shelf or to get more inventory, in different distribution centers? So there is, in terms of how the model needs to change. And then from a customer perspective, right, there needs to be a continuity. I can't have a message shown to me on a streaming platform, see a Facebook ad, and then go into the store and none of it matches. That's not good, especially, for example, if you have new products, right? So that messaging being consistent, or at least having some of those differentiators in there, but the foundational, and then the legacy stuff, right? So you don't want to go into the store. It's not a good experience when you see the really shiny, really cool video on TikTok or OTT, and then you go in the store and it's this physical paper display from 1998, and you're going, I don't know, it doesn't give you confidence as a consumer. So connecting all those pieces, that's the hard part.
And I think I don't want to say it's a struggle, but it's something I feel like retailers have been trying to do and evolve kind of that online to in-store experience for the last kind of few years. And I feel like every year everybody's getting a little bit better at it. Stores are getting smarter. Buyers are getting a little bit better at the right displays, and so are the brands too. So I think that's awesome. Yeah. Do you see personalization playing a role? I feel like that's kind of a hot button word and it's kind of hard, I feel like, to tie personalization online to in-store, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the, like a total layup to personalization on the retail side that I don't see as many retailers that I think as we should taking part in it is you may also like recommendation engines are a fantastic basket builder. And I fall party to it every time. If you just, in fact, sometimes I've now become reliant on looking in that section to see what else there is. And so that tells me from a holistic like experience standpoint, being able to put that together, but then also like in store, we don't have to get super fancy. It's not like I have to go in to every Target and see, and in fact, I don't like it when I see like those digital price tags on the shelf that can change prices. And so like, for example, we know that geographically, some of those prices are being changed wherever you are or whatever. Like it doesn't, I don't know, it makes me feel weird as a consumer, but we have some cool stuff too. There's like cooler screens and things where you go in and like the front of the grocery, like the freezer or the fridge door has the pictures and whatnot. And, you know, you can touch it and it makes us feel very futuristic and cool. But in the end, really what I need is if I look something up online to know how much it is, where it is, how can I get it? Do I need to physically go into store? Can I do it very curbside? I just need it to be accurate. Do you remember ever like having to call a store, like 6 stores and ask them if they have a thing and then wait on hold or have to drive to 4 things? Solve that and I'll be hooked for, I'm hooked forever.
So for our last question, and we touched on a few of these kind of topics already, but where do you see the retail media space evolving over the next year, 5 years? And then kind of going forward, what do you see this landscape kind of looking like?
So to your point earlier about personalization, I do think we'll see a little bit more of that. I think it's helpful. I think the way that it's going to come about though is less subtle, the way that, for example, like Facebook or Google does, where they just kind of like slide it in based on other things. It's going to be more like that recommendation engine. It's going to be more like things that you also bought, the ability to favorite items or add them to a list, right? So help kind of curate your own experience. And then in a way, we're going to teach them, like, this is how we want to interact with the assortment that they have online. And then other pieces are, I'd be remiss if I didn't say programmatic. Walmart Trade Desk, that came out, obviously. We're looking for Kroger's PMP any day now. Target's already had this. And then there was a couple announcements recently about partnerships with, like, for example, Yahoo. How do you not, as a retailer, take your first party data? And here's the other reason why, and I absolutely agree with it, is they're retailers. They're not media companies. And if we expect them to be both and do both really well, and they're living in the shadow of Amazon and Google, this isn't going to go well for us. Like, we're going to be very frustrated and it's going to feel slow. So if they can remove it from, like, essentially behind those walls of management or like, what do we say, the wall gardens, and get those into audiences that we can, buy through a platform like the Trade Desk or DV360 or whatever. Wow, look at that. Now you've taken it and you've given it to the people who this is what they do for a living, and let them run with it. And now we can actually see the strength of the first party data relative to right now, where we're like, yeah, okay, we're all doing a thing right now. So there's that, the personalization piece. I don't think we're going to see, obviously there's going to be a few more retailers that launch networks, everybody's who do it. I'm actually really curious to see how many more third-party marketplaces, like these little tiny ones that we see pop up. Because if you're on Amazon and you want to kind of split out your catalog and have a few eggs in a few different baskets, depending on what you sell, specialty retailer third-party marketplaces could really be good for you. They won't know the volume, Amazon. I find no one's going to show up tomorrow with another Amazon. Come on. So why make that comparison? Why not instead dig in or lean into an audience? When someone selects the Home Depot to go shop at or Ulta, they have a very specific reason. They're not going, oh, I also need eggs, right? They went there for a reason. So why not lean into and take advantage of those capabilities? So you just got to look at each of those retailers and say, all right, are my people there? And in which case, in this next year, lean in.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for talking with us today. Do you want to let us know how we can find you on LinkedIn or learn more from you?
Awesome. Yes, please find me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find. I'm also on Twitter at EBKendo. I also have an ad week, a regular ad week column about monthly or so. So you can find me on there if you want to hear me just kind of run off on something for a few minutes.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you.